when they first devised this system of government, what were they basing it on? I know part of it was on the Greeks, but like, how did they make it to the point where even today we marvel at it?
Yeah.
250 years later, people go back and like, look what they did. This is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. So lots of factors. First of all, it was true what I said. They have experienced at a reserve and at sort of, as somebody said, salutary neglect. People didn't pay attention to the colonists. And they had learned suddenly they were more literate than their British compatriots. They paid less taxes, and they paid it to local stuff. And they were had land. And most folks in England and Wales and Scotland and Ireland were living dependent lives. They'd worked the land of somebody else for 1,000 years. So they've got this British constitutional monarchy, which is a really strong thing. And King George is not a bad guy. He really does believe that Parliament has this role to play, and the House of Lords and the House of Commons. They're kind of the checks and balances that we'd think of. But they're also in the middle of the Enlightenment, where they're beginning to say that there are certain rights that are natural. That's the word that I think Jefferson would use. That is to say, they are not bestowed by a monarch. They're natural, that all men are created equal. This is big stuff. And this is distilling, in Jefferson's words in the Declaration, a century of Enlightenment thinking. And the Enlightenment has been a kind of philosophical and human and kind of governmental dynamic that's coming out of the Renaissance, right? We know what the Renaissance is in art. Leonardo da Vinci, Bernini, all of this stuff, some music, but what it's doing on a social scene and a philosophical scene is it's doing that, and they're reaching back to antiquity, as you say, and they're pulling back some of the best ideas of self-discipline, of temperance, of virtue, all of these sorts of things. But then, because they've experienced all these years of this misuse and distrust from the mother country 3,000 miles away, takes at least a month for information to get there. The Britain wins with our help what we call the French and Indian War, which was a global war called the 7 Years' War, and they've got now the biggest, most far-flung empire on earth, but they can't protect its own colonists who are trying to pour over the Appalachians to take Native American land, and it's causing uprisings. And so they say, you can't go over 1763. You can't go over that. And, oh, by the way, we're broke, so we need you to help us to pay for this stuff. But we don't have any representation there. So native lands, taxation, representation become this thing. And it goes on for so long. They've watched.
Subscribe if you want 10 years of good luck.